Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. Got some good news for all of you today. The day before yesterday, the Call of Duty Zombies comic emerged onto the interwebs, and it's been extremely highly anticipated for a long time, and it was really good to finally be able to read it. In fact, I've read through the whole thing on my channel. It's linked in the description down below if you want to check it out. But there are 3 ciphers in the comic that have been just tucked in there, little Easter eggs for us to solve, for us to decode, and for us to understand. And yesterday I posted a video showing the solution to one of those ciphers. We solved it literally as soon as we found it. It was fantastic. And today I have the solution to another one of those ciphers. So this one was solved by ReeseWood17. He tweeted me and said, "Milo, I've got a solution for you." We then jumped in DMs. He explained what he had done. I've now got the full solution and we can talk about what it all means. So it's the cipher on the page where you've got the zombie pointing towards the garage, you've got a load of other zombies trying to get in, and above the garage it says BZWEIXWITGEPCTD, etc. So that's the cipher that we've solved today. The decode was actually achieved by ReeseWood using a Vigenere cipher. So these are his words as to how he did it. He says, "I saw the letters and initially thought Caesar or Vigenere. So starting with Caesar, I checked all 26 shifts and found nothing. Then I switched over to Vigenere. The first word is 3 letters long, and it's blocked out into a word of 3, and so I thought, that could be the word the. I then input letters into the Vigenere key such that the word the was made out of the plaintext of this enciphered message, and that gave me the keyword ISS. So, he said he saw that and went, okay, could that be issue? Could that be the word issue in there? So he typed out the word issue and got issue. That gave him the KE, so he then knew that the key might be the keepers. He probably tried summoning key and stuff as well, but the keepers was his target, so he typed out more of the keywords such that the keepers would be the decode, and he ended up with issue the co. And then at that point he went, okay, issue the co, issue the comic maybe, and voila, the final result for this cipher: the keepers shall rise once more. Which is really interesting, because yesterday we had a cipher talking about the Chronorium, and I went into a little bit of depth about what exactly the purpose of that message was. But this one is weird for completely other reasons. It's talking about the keepers in a comic that thus far seems to have no Apothicon or Keeper influence. It's in an era of time in the Zombies story where the influence of the Keepers and the Apothicons was so far out of our minds. In fact, at the time, for us as players, they hadn't been introduced in the story in their Keeper and Apothicon forms. That hadn't happened yet. We had Vril, we had that influence, but we didn't have specifically and explicitly Keepers and Apothicons. So the fact that in the Transit Crew timeline, where they're working with this voice in Stullinger's head to achieve some objective, the fact that the keepers shall rise once more is a message that has been slipped in there is really interesting to me. Now, this could well be a message that is not intended to be taken to be part of this time period. That is possible as well. That is another interpretation. And if that's the case, we could say, well, I guess the most obvious other time for it to be potentially referring to would be after the events of Revelations, because that's where we are now as a player base. Either we go towards where the characters are in their time frame, in which case we're in the Green Run time frame and we're working towards Richtofan's plan, as we see in the comic, or I feel like we're in our timeline, in the player timeline, the out-of-game timeline, in which we've just finished the Salvation map pack, we've just finished Revelations, and we're looking forward to whatever might come next from Treyarch in a couple of years' time, and in the rest of the comics. So, if that's the case, that second option of it being from our perspective, and this is referring to something at the end of Revelations, have the Keepers fallen? That seems really weird to me. Why or how the Keepers would have fallen due to Revelations seems a bit mysterious. I mean, you could argue that because of the fact that Monty says, no more Apothicons, no more undead, it's just my perfect world now, maybe in his perspective, or from his perspective rather, he is saying also that the Keepers would be vanquished from existence as well. And if that's the case, then I suppose that could be an instance of the Keepers falling. So is this therefore a hint towards the next Treyarch game, saying, yes, the Keepers have been wiped from existence now, yes, they have fallen now, but they shall rise once more. They shall make some kind of reappearance in the future, and that reappearance in the future would have to be Treyarch's next title, because the comic all takes place before Revelations, and so we can't have them rising again before they've fallen, right? Unless you switch back to that first interpretation and you think that they fell at some point before the Green Run crew had their little story. They fell then, and then in the Green Run crew's timeline in the comic, that will be when we see them rise again. So later in the comic, we'll have a load of Keeper influence, and something like that will happen. That's possible too. I'm not really sure which side of that debate I fall on. I feel like I'm inclined to think that them rising again would be something that would happen after Revelations, but then at the same time, I just feel like that would be a bit weird. Like, it just feels like a weird thing for them to include in the comic in the first issue now, if it's not going to relate to the rest of the comic. We know the Chronorium is going to relate to the rest of the comic, so my personal opinion probably is that there'll be some kind of Keeper influence coming in the comic itself, which brings me to my next point, okay? This means the Keepers have fallen at some point. When did they fall? The Keepers won their battle against the Apothicons, banished them to the layer of reality beneath creation, such that the Apothicons were always trying to fight their way back in and leech from the rest of the universe. That happened, but the Keepers came out on top there. They did not fall. So when did the Keepers fall? It's a bit of a mystery in my opinion. There might be some little teases towards that kind of style of thing here and there, but really, on the whole, I don't think that we've seen a very particular event that we would be able to describe as the Keepers falling, certainly prior to the transit crew's existence, ever. And in that case, does that mean that this has to be related to something after Revelations? You see what I mean? It's just a real pigsty, this one. It's a little bit of a spider's web, but it's an interesting one. It's a fun spider's web, and it's going to give us a lot to think about for the future issues of the comic and future Treyarch games that they're going to be working on real hard right now. So whatever happens, it's a win-win for us because it's telling us info about the future to do with the Keepers that's pretty interesting in my opinion. So, congrats again to Reese Wood for solving this. I've been MrRoflWaffles. If you want more Cipher talk or anything like that, there'll be some links in the description for you to check out. Other than that though, thanks for watching, subscribe so you don't miss more Cipher discussion in the future when we solve the last one, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.